Why on earth would these medical professionals basically push this propaganda in their practices to parents and shame them for this?
The suicide rate amongst trans-declaring children is no different to the suicide rate in the teenage population matched for age and sex. Children have been told that if their parents are being abusive, somebody will come and get them and remove them from this abusive household where the parents want to call the child by its birth name and use the appropriate pronouns.
Is there a financial question in all this?
They're determined to destroy the scientific fact that sex is binary.
They might kill themselves because they've got a very high suicide rate. What would you say to those people?
Gender-affirming care is a terrible misnomer for bodily mutilation of children and young people. What it entails is a three-stage process.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the ARC podcast. This week, we're going to be breaking down this amazing book with its author, Professor Dianna Kenny, where we're going to be talking about gender ideology, social contagion, and the scandal of youth gender medicine. This is probably one of the more shocking episodes, and I'm looking forward to having this discussion. And with me to help meander through the particular topic is Dianna. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
We've been connected through a mutual friend who people in the show know, which is Ed Sparius, who is a battler in this particular topic. And I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to come in here to thank you for the book, Intransigence. This is a topic which very much hits close to my audience because my audience is about 66% women. And obviously a lot of parents, a lot of mothers, a lot of grandparents concerned about their kids and grandkids. And it really is quite militant in Australia, as you know, in Melbourne, in New South Wales, the laws that are being passed where if your kid's struggling with being gay or being trans or whatever, it's very difficult to even have a discussion about this with your children. Take them to a priest or take them to another medical professional or someone. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to come in on this topic, because so often we find with professors and doctors, they do tend to keep to themselves, and it's in the too hard basket. And so I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into this topic.
Well, my whole professional life has been concerned with the health and welfare of children. I started my professional life as a primary school teacher. And then I went back to university and got a master's degree in school counselling, and I became a school counsellor and then a specialist counsellor for emotionally disturbed children. While I was doing that, I was studying for my PhD, and I got a part-time job at the University of Western Sydney as a lecturer. And when I completed my PhD, I got a job at the University of Sydney. And I was there for 31 years, and I became a professor of psychology in 2006, and I left in 2019 to go into full-time private practice.
Right. And tell me, on this particular topic, was there a particular moment where you realised this is the area I want to go in? Was there a story, or was there anything in particular that made you feel compelled to go and talk about this? I mean, one doesn't simply print a book on this, for example.
Well, how it happened was I had a colleague who is a psychiatrist, and he tends to work with adults. And he started to get some referrals from parents for mid-age adolescents, 15, 16, 17. And he rang me and said, "Are you getting any referrals from adolescents about what's called gender dysphoria?"
Right.
And at that point, I hadn't received any referrals. And he said, "I'm not really an adult psychiatrist. are you happy to accept some referrals? And so I said, look, send me a couple and I'll see what I can make of it. And the floodgates just opened.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just incredible.
Mm.
So up to about 2010, there were almost no cases whatsoever of gender dysphoria. And the gender clinics would have got 1 or 2 referrals per year. After 2010, there was an incredibly rapid increase in the number of children whose parents were referring them to gender clinics. And this is when what I call a social epidemic has occurred, social contagion took over, and all of the institutions that were supposed to look after children, education, medicine, law, politics, all of them drank the Kool-Aid of transgenderism, and suddenly there was legislation, there were policies, and the whole thing became embedded in Australian culture in such a rapid way that I was absolutely horrified to see what was happening. So I started making public statements in around 2018,
Right.
19, and it was a very unpopular thing to do. So in the early stages, because I'd been seeing young people with gender dysphoria and working with their families, certain organisations were asking me to go and talk to them about it and what did I make of it and how did I understand it. And some of those talks were through the mental health networks run by New South Wales Health. And I would go and give my findings and, explain why I thought we had to be extremely cautious about this kind of presentation. And gradually there were complaints made about me to the bodies that govern the practice of health professionals. And so suddenly I found myself having to explain and justify and desist, so to speak.
Right.
And it's been a very unpleasant, experience for the last 7-8 years.
Yeah.
And more of my colleagues have been caught in this terrible net because they too have been critical of gender-affirming care, particularly for children and adolescents. So my entire focus is on children and adolescents. All the statements I make are about that age group because for adults, it's a different situation. They are in a position of knowing their own mind and giving their own consent, but children are not. And so I feel very strongly that we have to put the very hard brakes on making any permanent changes to children's bodies at an age when they really do not understand what it means.
Right. So you've alluded to the fact it can be quite a militant crowd that you're up against in this sphere. And this is no stranger to us on the show. We've had Curly Smith and Lyle Sheldon on, and as you know, you would have been reading the cases that have often been brought against them. They've probably got a dozen cases between them just on this topic. And for Curly Smith, for those of you that don't know, she's, for example, tried to campaign to keep men out of women's sports, for example, and copped enormous attacks because of it, and in some cases lawsuits. Some of your detractors and Lyle's and Cooley's might be saying, you don't understand what these people are going through. But what you've just outlaid to me is a history of care and being begrudgingly coming into this because a lot of these people have come across your practice or care. Or what would you say to those detractors out there?
Well, I've had a kind of 360-degree experience with children because I've been a teacher, I've been a school psychologist or a school counsellor, I've been an academic, a researcher, a professor of psychology. My specialty is child development, called developmental psychology and psychopathology, and I'm also trained in marriage and family therapy.
Right.
So I would say to them that I have decades of experience in working with children and young people and their families, and I've had very good outcomes of the therapy that I've developed for gender dysphoric children who naturally will desist if they're not interfered with. But it may take 3, 4, 5 years, and we have to put them in a holding pattern and give them time to develop and to think and to draw their own conclusions.
Right.
And to have some life experience.
Yeah.
Because most of these children who are declaring themselves trans or non-binary and pansexual and all of these kinds of labels,
Yeah.
most of them have never had a romantic relationship.
Right.
Most of them, they don't even know what it means to, they're not ready to identify their sexuality.
Right.
They're still working that through and thinking about it. A lot of these young people have neurodiversity. So a disproportionate number of these children are on the autism spectrum.
Right.
They have ADHD. They're often from families where there is a lot of conflict. Some of the families have broken up and they're living with single parents. So there's a lot of factors that must be considered when a child presents with gender dysphoria, because it could just be the signal that they're giving that something is wrong.
Right.
Because they've got the language for that. They've been fed the language by hundreds of thousands of, influencers on social media, all these omnipotent people who haven't finished high school, but have transitioned at, 16, 17, and now they know everything.
Yeah, that's right.
And they're being fed this nonsense from a very young age.
Yeah.
And that's what I would say to them.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're talking about.
I love that saying. I think it was Peter Hitchens who said, when I was young and I knew everything.
Yes, that's
and
right.
Proceed. Now, I was going to say, a lot of people, they're not familiar with these terms. Like, what is gender affirming care? What exactly does that do to kids?
Well, gender affirming care is a terrible misnomer for bodily mutilation of children and young people, because what it entails is a 3-stage process. The first is what's called social transition, and that's where the child chooses a new name and pronouns, and sometimes they will dress in opposite sex clothing.
Yeah.
So if they're a boy, they'll grow their hair long and, paint their fingernails. And if they're a girl, they'll wear tracky dacks and look daggy. They'll wear the ripped jeans and all of those sorts of things, change their name, and they get very offended if their parents or anyone else uses their dead name, which is the name that was given to them by their parents. So social transition is a change of name and pronouns and sometimes appearance in clothing, hair, and so on. The second stage is where the doctors get involved and give the child what are called puberty blockade drugs. And this usually occurs at around 10, 11, 12 years of age. And it's to stop the natural puberty of the child. And the reason that was given is that it gives the child time to think about whether they're male or female. Because they haven't been told that that is decided at the point of conception. It's not something that a 10 or 11-year-old can decide off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not a boy anymore. I'm now a girl. But this is the propaganda. It gives the child time to think. And the other part of that is the claim that puberty blockade is completely reversible. We know that it is not completely reversible, particularly if the child stays on this drug for a number of years.
Yeah.
So the child fails to develop, they fail to go through puberty, but they're progressing with their age cohort, remaining as children, while their peers are moving into the next stage of development and going through the pubertal changes. So this causes social difficulties for children because they're out of step now with their peers. But there are also significant physical problems that come with being on puberty long term, the main one of which is a loss of bone density or a failure to develop bone density commensurate with age.
Right.
And a loss of bone density leads to osteoporosis, which is a very serious condition in later life where you have what's called minimal trauma fractures. So your bones are so brittle that they will break very easily. If you just bumped your hand on the table, you'd break your wrist, that kind of thing.
Right.
And the other one is that they don't have any genital development. And once again, if they stay on it for too long, those organs will fail to develop and these children will be infertile and will not be able to have normal sexual functioning.
I'm very concerned about this topic, and if there's people listening out there thinking about switching off, I hope this will freak you out. Just listen a little bit longer. What is the situation with regards to parents being able to intervene in these situations? Because in my view, my feel is that the imbalance is, no, your kids can actually be taken off you. What would you say to parents out there saying, what are you talking about? The government can't take my kids off me. Me and my wife, we're loving parents. What is the actual situation with regards to the laws in this country?
The actual situation is sinister. All of the parents that I've spoken to who have children declaring themselves transgender, and they were thinking that they were doing the right thing by going to the experts at the gender clinic. But the gender clinic only has one treatment, and that's gender affirmation. And when the parent expresses concern or upset at the haste with which these children are being channeled through these various stages of gender transition, they are excluded from the treatment. Right. So the practitioners will force them out of the room. They insist on speaking to the child on his or her own. They will not give any feedback to the parents about what is happening. And the parents are told that they are abusive parents if they do not affirm their child immediately. And on that basis, children have been told that if their parents are being abusive, then they can ring the police and they can ring the Department of Justice and Communities, and somebody will come and get them and remove them from this abusive household where the parents want to call the child by its birth name and use the appropriate pronouns that match their birth sex. So that is now considered to be abusive behaviour by a parent. It's a horrifying thought that a parent is vilified in that way for trying to safeguard their child from a movement that is sick in itself, based on propaganda and anti-science.
Yes.
So in answer to your question, it's a very dire situation for parents because the Education Department has piggybacked onto this ideology such that there is now a bulletin called Bulletin 55, which has been issued by the Department of Education, whereby the principal can assume the role of parent for the child while the child is at school. So it's in loco parentis. So while the child is at school, the principal can make a decision about changing the child's name and pronouns without informing the parents.
That's insane. That's the first I've heard that.
It's absolutely insane.
Right.
So there is no protection for children. There is no safeguard. You know, all of these organisations that are there to protect them from harm are opening the doors to harm, and the parents have almost no comeback. And nor do the therapists, because most of the states of Australia have now passed conversion therapy ban legislation. So the parents are in a bad position, but so are the therapists.
Yes.
So anybody who is accused of conversion therapy, and their definition of conversion therapy is not automatically affirming the child's gender statements or gender beliefs.
Yeah.
That is conversion therapy.
Yeah.
And you can face a very large fine or years in jail if you're convicted of conversion therapy.
Right.
But there's so much incredible dishonesty in this movement because they try to equate conversion therapy for transgender children with what used to occur with young gay people who were subjected to appalling psychiatric treatments to try to make them straight.
Yes.
And they try to equate them, but they are nothing.
No, not at all. And for example, I remember when the New South Wales debate was happening, and there were members of the parliament saying that, if you don't affirm, like you are basically denying these people's identity. You basically, what you want, you are a Christian member of parliament or whatever, you want them to have shock therapy, which is what went through gay people to make them not gay. And it's like, no, we don't. We just want parents to be able to have the right to take the kid to another medical expert or their priest or whatever to have talks about this, to talk it through it. But you're not even allowed to do that.
No.
I will repeat, you cannot even take your kid to a priest and actually do that. And actually, you know, your kid could be taken off you in Victoria, where it's worst, and in New South Wales, where it's they're both the worst states for this stuff. And I don't think that's registered with a lot of people yet. So I really want to ring the alarm bells on this.
Oh, yes. Yes, ring them loud, because it's a terrible state of affairs. And Australia is way behind what's happening in the rest of the world. So the pandemic, I'm calling it a pandemic, it's a social pandemic, whereby the whole of the country has got behind the transgender movement and thrown millions, if not billions of dollars into setting up new gender clinics and expanding the gender services and so forth. There are now some countries overseas that have put a halt to it.
Right.
And there are about 26 states in America who now have bans on gender-affirming care for minors.
Yes.
The Scandinavian countries have stopped allowing minors to be transitioned. And even in Australia, we've had a little bit of caution occurring in Queensland, where there's been a halt on the prescription of puberty blockers to young children until there's going to be a review of, you know, its safety and efficacy and so forth. But even in the face of that, all of the other states are just moving ahead, you know, like a juggernaut.
Yes.
To expand services, to recruit children into these services.
Yes.
And just a couple of days ago,
Yes.
it was announced that the government was awarding $10 million to train health professionals to be transgender sensitive and culturally appropriate.
Wow. You're joking. We need to get a hidden camera in there, Rami.
Send Drew.
Yeah, I will send Drew Pavla. He recently exposed something with the NDIS. I have behind me something from our friend Ed Sparius, who couldn't be with us. He's in Victoria. But this is a survey that was done of 78 ex-LGBT people, many of which I believe are in the UK, correct me if I'm wrong. And this does cause harm. This is a huge problem. Trans people are ringing the bell on this, saying, I didn't know. I was too young. I'm now going to sue you and the government for basically forcing this down. I was not in a position. I was not of the age of consent. And so, I mean, this is the most compassionate thing we can do for these kids, to put it off. A lot of people might say, okay, sure, Joel, you're compassionate about these particular kids and they might grow up and regret it, but they may not get to 21. They may not get to an age of consent of 18. They might kill themselves because they've got a very high suicide rate. What would you say to those people?
One of the profound lies that the transgender organisation, lobby group, whatever you want to call it, has propagated around the world is that if you don't transition your child is at very high risk of suicide. And there's been a lot of mantras like, would you rather have a dead kid or a trans kid?
Right.
You know, all of this. Or would you rather have a dead daughter or a live son? These kinds of very emotive, guilt-inducing, things that parents are told so that they will sign the consent papers for the child to be mutilated. But in fact, the opposite is true. So we've now had about 3 very major studies that have shown that the suicide rate amongst trans-declaring children is no different to the suicide rate in the teenage population matched for age and sex.
Right.
So if you look at the suicide rate and you say, well, let's look at 16-year-old males who are heterosexual or cisgender, as the jargon goes, and look at a trans 16-year-old, there is no difference in the suicide rate.
Right.
But where the difference arises, and this is the slide that I'm showing you here,
Oh, yeah.
This is where the difference arises. If you have a look at this slide, the male and female controls, that means they're people who are not transgender and they have not had transgender surgery. The dotted lines show the rates for men and women who have had genital surgery. So this is post-transition in its most extreme form, where they've had genital surgery. And you can see that the suicide rate is generally 19 times higher in the people who have transitioned medically compared with the normal population.
Right.
And you can see that there is a different rate also for men and women.
Right.
But you can see the precipitous drop, which means that fewer and fewer people are surviving into older age if they've had surgeries for transition.
So just bringing up the graphic again, just so my audience understands. So with the top unbroken lines, the top two, what are they showing?
They are showing the general population of males and females.
Right. So where there's been no intervention.
Yes. Right. So these people were followed for 30 years. And the study was looking at who survives for 30 years after genital surgery.
Okay.
So they followed an equal number of people in the general population, but they're closely matched for age and sex, so you get a direct comparison.
Right.
And the two bottom lines, the two dotted lines, are the survival rates of male to female transgender people and female to male transgender people.
Right.
And they survive far less over the 30 years than the people on the two top lines, which are the general population.
So just keep it up there, Ami. So with those particular examples, by the time they get to about 30, 25 years after these surgeries have taken place, we end up basically seeing that there is a 25% reduction in the population of these transgender individuals. Is that what I'm reading?
No. What it's saying is that the suicide rate is so much higher for post-transition individuals.
Yes, yes.
And the decreasing line shows fewer and fewer people surviving over 30 years.
Yes. Sorry, I mean, when I mean reduction in the population of the trans people. So about 25% of them have a suicide attempt rate, basically. So 25% of them kill themselves, basically. Because I'm seeing it go from 0.1 to 0.75, basically.
Yes.
So
that's the proportion not surviving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we see so in that cohort of people, it ends up being over that about the 25-year mark. I'm seeing
30 years.
Around about 25 years into it, the males drop off to almost 0.75. Meaning that 25 of the individuals of the male individuals that did went through this trans surgery killed themselves. This isn't a suicide attempt rate.
No, this is completed suicide.
Yes. Right. And then it's about 26 years into this that the women reach a similar rate as well. And so, like, one of the arguments they then say is, well, great point, Dianna, but however, that's because society doesn't yet accept them. This is a good thing for them to do the surgery, but the suicide rate is because society hasn't accepted them. What would you say as a result of that?
They talk about minority stress, and sure, there is such a thing as minority stress. So why would we place healthy developing children into a group that becomes known as a minority before they've even finished their social, emotional and physical development?
Right.
And what they're trying to tell us also is that being trans or having gender dysphoria and wanting to transition is not a mental health issue. They're just saying it's a normal variation of sexuality. And of course it isn't, because if you look at all the graphs and all the history of transgenderism, we have never seen the proportion of young people who are declaring themselves transgender. We've never seen that in any other time in history.
Interesting. You mentioned in that graphic that the suicide rate of teenagers at that age, trans that are identified as trans, are basically the suicide rate is on par with their peers that are non-struggling.
Yes,
with this
exactly.
issue.
Yeah.
And that's what that graphic shows in the early parts. If you can bring that up, Rami, just briefly, that's what that graphic shows in the early parts. But as you check in on, in anywhere from 1 year on up to 30 years on, it's a disaster.
It's a disaster, yes.
I'm curious, why such a big drop-off after 10 years? It seems as though this is a huge increase in suicides.
Now, we can only speculate on that, but from the research that I've done, there are a number of reasons for it. One is that genital transgender surgeries can be disastrous for physical health. What people don't realise, even today, that people suffer from terrible things. So, for example, if you go from female to male, you still have female reproductive organs. And because your body is being bombarded with testosterone, these women who now identify as men suffer excruciating pain from vaginal atrophy and uterine atrophy that will often necessitate a complete hysterectomy to relieve the pain in a young person who was otherwise perfectly healthy before their body was flooded with testosterone. Another thing that happens is that about 65% of them have incontinence. They develop incontinence, which they would not have otherwise developed. So that heightens the risk of infection. And so you're constantly a medical patient.
Yes.
You're constantly in pain. And I'm sorry to be very graphic, but in the male to female, if they have a penectomy, that means they have their male organ cut off, and it's inverted to form a vagina, those people have to dilate every single day of their lives to keep that open, because that skin was never meant to go there.
So when you say dilate, what do you mean? It has to...
They have to dilate the
Right.
vaginal opening,
Right.
otherwise it will close over.
It'll seal up.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
And it's a very painful thing to
Right.
do. And
Right.
it's just imagine having to inflict that pain on yourself every day. So I think it's because their lives become intolerable, not just because of the physical pain, but also because of the social isolation. Because the dating pool is vastly reduced for transgender people. And also we know that they are at much higher risk of unemployment, homelessness,
Yes.
social isolation, and, abuse and attacks.
Yes.
So their life does not feel worth living.
Falls apart. And especially thanks to the government basically saying, I'm going to sever you from your parents. That's how this all starts. And then going into it, I mean, that's a terrible start. No, you don't have any roots anymore.
No.
And then on top of that, like, what relationships are you having after this, both romantically, but in terms of friendships? You're not exactly in the best state of mind.
No.
Because of these frustrations constantly. And I totally agree with you. These are people we should feel empathy for, people that need help. But, like, it's got to be in a measured way. We can't do what feels good in this moment and then have no follow-up and follow the data.
No.
Which indicates a disaster.
No, that's right.
I mean,
look, there have been so many medical disasters for the want of caution. So, for example, I'll just give you one example. In the 1950s, a guru pediatrician appeared who said that new mothers should not sleep their babies on their back, but should sleep them on their stomachs. And the reason for that was, in case they vomited in their sleep, they wouldn't swallow it. And they thought that was a very good idea. As a result of that change of policy of sleeping babies on their backs, tens of thousands of newborn infants, up to and including, 15, 16, 17-month-old children, died of sudden infant death syndrome. And this was a policy that just took off on the say-so of one person, with no research, no proper explanation for why mothers should change what they have been doing for so long.
Yeah.
That's one example.
How did the kids pass?
They suffocated.
They just...
Yeah.
Oh, my
Like,
gosh.
because they've got no muscular control as a newborn, and their face got buried into the blankets or the sheets and they couldn't breathe.
Oh, my gosh. 10,000.
Tens of thousands. Jesus. And that's one medical disaster. And I'll just give you one more example. In the 1940s and 50s, there were people presenting with fairly intractable mental health issues, very serious depression or very serious antisocial behaviours or whatever. And this psychiatrist came up with what was called a prefrontal lobotomy. And basically what that entailed was hammering an ice pick through your eye into your brain to kill off some brain cells in your prefrontal cortex, which is an incredibly important part of the brain for reasoning and socialization and so on. And it was hailed as, the breakthrough to intractable psychiatric illnesses, until they discovered that these people became socially ruined was the term that the critics used, that they became zombies. They became unable to think for themselves or make decisions or function in society. Now, the guy who invented this surgery, his name was Igor Munov, was given the Nobel Prize for Medicine.
Of course, why not? That's terrible.
This is what we're facing with this transgender pandemic. It is exactly the same type of medical scandal that is occurring now, and we have not learnt from the past.
But Dianna, why don't you just trust the experts? And it's like, well, Dianna is an expert, so shut up, guys, if you're out there. That's horrific. Before I forget, you had a second graph. Did you want me to bring that up?
Yes, bring that up.
So this was the graph to do with when I asked you about suicidality and people passing because struggling with this. What is this particular graph show?
This graph is a little bit complex, but I'll explain it. I was probably the first person in Australia to say that what we're facing here is massive social contagion of young people joining the throng, wanting to walk through the pearly gates of a transgender life.
Right.
And I was saying that social contagion has been demonstrated in a range of fields, and not just in, health, not just in medicine, or not just in psychology, but also in politics and in other places. The stock market runs on social contagion. Politics runs on groupthink, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So what this graph is showing is the 0 point with the red vertical line is the day before a very popular pop musician committed suicide.
Right.
And it's showing the suicide rate in the general population before the suicide was announced and splashed over the media. And in that, and so it's plotting the suicide rate from 9 days before to 0 point in the general population.
Right.
Then if you look from 0 to 10, this is the first 10 days after that pop musician had committed suicide. And you can see in the general population a vast increase in suicides after the announcement of that suicide in the pop musician.
Who was that artist?
It was a Korean artist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I don't know the name.
So with the coefficient, when the line is below 0 on the coefficient, that means below average?
Well, that's a good question. No, we can't necessarily interpret it like that.
Sure.
It's a complex statistical function.
Sure.
But what it's really meant to show is the increase in suicide rate.
Yeah.
I mean, suicide is a low frequency occurrence.
Yeah.
And you've got to use complex statistics to actually show trends.
Sure.
So basically, if you looked at the so in this study, it was possible to partition the general population into male and female and younger and older. And the number of young females less than 29 years of age had the highest suicide rate.
Right.
And guess who has the highest transition rate in this social contagion of gender dysphoria?
Young females.
Young females.
Right.
Yeah, young females. It's the same.
So
yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Young females are most susceptible to social contagion of suicide, but they're also more susceptible to the social contagion of other mental health issues like non-suicidal self-injury, which we call self-harm, the cutting and the scratching. infliction of harm on yourself that isn't meant to kill you. That's called non-suicidal self-harm or self-injury. But even other things like eating disorders. Eating disorders occurs in clusters. And that was very well established in a peak period where eating disorders were almost an epidemic in young adolescent females.
Yeah.
Drug use, marijuana use, delinquency, all of these things are socially embedded behaviours. And in a very complex way, when people operate in groups, there are the more susceptible to the contagion and the leaders of the contagion who, encourage and reinforce people to engage in that particular behaviour.
Right. It's almost like a trauma bond in a way. Like they're all sort of, the idea that, this particular artist has committed suicide, they're bonded through the music, through the whatever.
Well, that's a very, very fair point. That's a very interesting way of expressing it, yeah.
But this graphic is devastating because, to me, maybe I'm reading into it too much, but to me, if this is how a society reacts to an artist in, you said Korea, passing, this is how the young people react, and it's devastating. The coefficient being as high as it is. Doesn't that mean that every time one of these young people in a microcosm in the community becomes trans and commits suicide, the impact it has on other people around them as well? Would that?
But the thing is that the trans people are not committing suicide.
Yes, it's the others.
There was a very, very big study done in the UK 3 or 4 years ago now, and it looked at what happened to 15,000 young people who transitioned. There were 4 suicides.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which I think that study showed that is lower than the general population of adolescents.
Right.
So the trans activists, the propagandists, leapt on that notion to guilt-induce parents.
Right.
And so in the early days, if a child came out as transgender and the parents naturally took them to a doctor and the doctor referred them to the gender clinic, and the gender clinic would feed the parents guilt-inducing propaganda and say, if you don't let your child transition, they are at vastly increased risk of suicide.
Yeah.
And so what does a parent do in that situation?
Sure. Okay, so the purpose of this graphic isn't so much showing how high the suicide rate is, trans. It's more the social contagion.
It's social contagion of suicide.
Of suicide, yes. Basically.
Yes.
And I do remember there was a, there was a, what was it? Another artist. He made a song, basically, and he had the suicide number in the song, and the calls to that suicide number just skyrocketed. As a result of that. But yeah, we do, it is, we're in a modern age, so.
Yes. So just so people are not confused, this graph that I'm showing you now, and I've got lots of other examples in the book, that social contagion exists in the general population. Just put trans aside for a minute. The question is there such a phenomenon as social contagion? Yeah. And this is just one study. It's a very good study that shows that social contagion does exist. And if social contagion exists in all these other areas, how is transgender contagion different? How is it that, young people are not subject to the forces of social contagion? Yep. And not only are young children and adolescents subject to it, but so are the professions who are supposed to be looking after these children. Right.
So it's a self-perpetuating thing. It even gets worse.
Because the doctors have all been subject to social contagion.
Right.
And now everybody is running scared. If they speak up about their concerns about transitioning young people, they risk losing their registration, losing their jobs, being ostracised, vilified, and so forth.
Right.
And that's what is in fact happening.
Right.
I have a colleague at the moment who spoke up about her concerns for transgendering children. She was stood down. She was a child psychiatrist. She was stood down from her job. She is still stood down 3 years later, and now she's facing termination.
Wow.
And that is only one isolated example.
All right. Okay, Dianna, that's it. I've got to speak up for the medical professionals and their integrity here. Why on earth would these medical professionals that, subscribe to the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm, why would they basically push this propaganda in their practices to parents and shame them for this?
Well, I've got two responses to that, and I'm sure there are more elements. The first one is, for some reason, which I can't fully explain, is that they have divorced themselves from all of their scientific education, their learning, everything they know to be true. And I'm talking about very basic things like men cannot become women and women cannot become men, something as basic as that. They have abandoned the logic that sex is binary and chromosomally determined. And these are doctors we're talking about, and specialist doctors like paediatricians and endocrinologists and GPs.
Right.
Now, why would a person do that? I don't understand how they can do it. But one of the reasons from a social contagion perspective is what I describe as moral narcissism. And that means that these people have chosen to look good rather than be good or be brave.
Right.
So looking good is, oh, yes, we are so supportive of this vulnerable minority.
Yeah.
And we're so on board and we're so sympathetic and we'll do everything we can to facilitate a comfortable life for these young people who are transgender. So that's the looking good.
Right.
But they have abdicated the being good. The being good is being brave and saying, we need to look at this. There is something terribly wrong with the ideology that is driving this phenomenon.
Yep.
It is anti-science.
Yep.
It is anti-logic.
Yeah.
It is anti-common sense.
Yes. Rainbow Marxists, I say. Rainbow Marxists. Kevin Donnelly wrote this amazing book, which basically goes through cancel culture and the long march to the institutions. And so you're saying a lot of these experts that are going through the universities, this is incentivized, basically this social justice in their profession. The scientific method, you've got to park it.
Yes.
Because you know better. I love that phrase. What'd you say? I always forget this name, this word, the moral...
the moral narcissist.
Moral narcissist. Yeah. Narcissists, there's narcissists everywhere. It's ridiculous. But no, we often talk about these books that come through as well. A lot of the journalists that are, what would you call it? The writers that are out there, like the pronoun book. They come out with the pronoun book.
Yes.
They have the my shadow is purple,
yes,
and they've got a boy on there. Granddad's Pride. That's a favorite. That's a favorite. I really enjoyed that one. But they've even got more shocking ones, which we've had on the show in the past. I mean, you got the queer chameleon. So you might learn a few new ones like moon gender and all of that in there. You've got here and queer. So it's sort of that idea of being prideful. And then where is welcome to sex? Because that is the most crazy one I'm sure you
that's
saw.
The one with the graphics.
The graphics, which I can't show on. Actually, no, I can. I probably can show, to be honest. But seriously, graphic stuff. I mean, the idea that I'm going to get censored online for this, but the kids aren't online anyway, so I can show this. So
you know what? I'll switch cameras maybe.
Horrific. It's actually horrific. Yeah, no, I honestly, when I first saw this and I saw what they're basically grooming kids
And
in
you
the
can't ban that from a library that kids go to.
no, no. Have you got a close up what from one of the cameras, Rami? It's actually shocking. I mean, I just can't believe that this is normal, and kids have access to this stuff. A lot of parents basically don't know that some of their schools have these, that some of their libraries have these. Some of these I grabbed from the state library in New South Wales, which is taxpayer funded library. Putting a penis on a condom. If you ever see Welcome to Sex, the authors love me. You know why the authors love me? Because I send so many people to buy their books, but they're not fans of their books, But no, look, this cultural revolution that is infecting the professions and competence of the scientific method, this is something we worry about. I would like to know, are there any financial incentives in getting tenure at a university or in performing the actual surgeries?
Everybody says follow the money, and that's not my profession, and I'm hoping some other people out there are following the money. But I do have a colleague who's actually trying to get a map of who's involved and, who's benefiting and all of this kind of thing. But it's a bit peripheral to my central concern, which is trying to save the children
Right.
From this fate that is not of their making.
Yes.
And I am very shocked and disgusted by books of this type, but there is one thing much more shocking, and it is the sex development curriculum of the education departments in this country.
Mm. I don't know why we have a federal education department. I really don't. It's gone downhill. We spend something like 20 billion a year, like way more than when my parents were at school.
And we're doing wars than Afghanistan.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's like I can't believe like the standards in OECD countries where we're collapsing, and I was in an interview the other day, and the guy was saying, things aren't that bad in Australia. We're seeing high school completion is better, university completion. I said, yeah, mate, but how good are the kids coming out?
Mm-hmm.
The quality's terrible. We pour more money into it. If money was education, we'd be doing great, but we're not.
Yes.
It's collapsing. It's actually inverse. And so someone's getting very rich of not doing very much, and we haven't gone back to basics. We've lost the thread. But no, in America, I was listening to Patrick Bet-David talk about this. He said if you were investing in clinics that conducted these surgeries in America, it would be a very sound investment, let's put it that way, because the doctors in America are making a lot of money off these surgeries. And so this obviously prompts a question, and it sounds like your friend is looking into it. What's going on in Australia? Who's getting rich off this? I mean, why are the medical professions not only following ideology, but is there a financial question in all this?
Oh, absolutely. Look, Big Pharma is having a bonanza. All of these extra drugs that, the puberty blockade, the gonadotropin agonists, the synthetic estrogens,
Right.
testosterone.
How much is all this stuff?
Oh,
and the surgery.
It's a fortune.
Well, what are you talking? Because people have no idea. They could be like, could be $5,000. They'd have no idea.
No.
I mean, to be on puberty blockers for a year, for example, what kind of costs range are we talking?
I can't give you a precise amount.
Of course.
I know that the testosterone and the estrogen would cost at least. You can have testosterone and mainly in a lot of different forms. You can have a gel, you can have a patch, you can have injections.
Right.
And I think the injections are around $500 each.
$500.
I'm only guessing.
Of course.
But it's a huge expense.
And how often would you do an injection?
Well, some of them have it every month, some of them every 3 months.
Okay.
And this is really the only break on children's behaviour, is that their parents say we're not paying for it. But in their beneficence, the Australian government is putting a lot more items on the PBS,
Yeah.
so that young people don't have to pay out of pocket.
Yes. What is that called? The public
Benefit scheme.
benefit scheme.
The pharmaceutical benefit
Right.
scheme.
So we subsidise the pharmaceutical product.
So,
And NDIS, would some of them have it covered under NDIS as a result as well, or?
Because there are so many young people with another disability who are declaring themselves trans, and they might already be on the NDIS for their autism or for some other reason, it's quite likely that NDIS would cover their surgeries.
Right.
And I know that the Department of Justice and Communities would pay for the treatment of children who are wards of the state, really vulnerable children, who have had trauma from a very early age, just fast-tracked.
This is horrific. It's horrific, and it's like, even if you don't have kids or never going to have kids, this is happening on your taxpayer dime.
Absolutely.
It's a huge concern.
Absolutely.
Don't forget, we pay him for the side effects as well.
Yeah, if it goes wrong.
Excellent. Absolutely. The side effects that I've just spoken about. So the specialists a lot of specialists have now built a specialist practice around trans. And so it's creating a demand that wasn't there. And on the internet now, you can go to trans-friendly paediatricians, endocrinologists, GPs, surgeons, psychologists, psychiatrists. So all of these professions are presenting themselves as rainbow-friendly. And that is, leading to increases in their bottom line, which is their yearly income, which they would not otherwise be getting. So a lot of people are benefiting. And it's not just in the financial way, but it's also people are taking on leadership roles in, transgender cultural sensitivity, and there are people out there who are changing our language. We've got this whole new vocabulary.
Yeah.
In some of the surveys now, and it used to ask, are you male or female? Well, some of the surveys now have 47 categories for what is your gender.
Yeah.
And we've got to have ethicists to tell us how to word our surveys.
Yeah.
So it's just going down the line, it's like snake oil.
Yeah. It's a shakedown.
It's a shakedown.
And for the corporations, it's like, what do you mean? If I pay this, then I get certified.
Yes.
And it's a safe space to work. And if I don't, they'll talk to their goons in the media, and they'll be like, I need you to do a hit on West Bank.
Yes.
Whatever. And then next thing you know, West Bank, it's a shakedown. You got to pay them out. You got to do the training.
Yeah.
It kind of, totally unrelated, but it reminds me of the smoking ceremonies, how it came out like the federal parliament had 12 grand for some of these smoking ceremonies. It's like, who's getting rich off this stuff? It's like, you're not doing good. Many Aboriginal activists say, forget you're welcome to country. Forget the smoking ceremonies. Just help us on the ground. Yep. Like, you're putting
40 billion?
It's $8 to $40 billion every year on scholarships and whatever for Aboriginal studies and support and whatever. It's not getting to the grassroots where they need it. They're actually complaining that it's going to. Yeah, it's money laundering. It's gone to consultants, lawyers, planners. It's going everywhere. And that's the problem. This is happening with everything.
It is happening with everything. Two things have happened that give us a little bit of encouragement. The first thing that's happened is that the first lawsuit against the medical practitioners who transitioned a young person at 13 and performed a double mastectomy at 16 and then, put her on the cross-sex hormones, she has sued her medical professionals for doing that, because now she is a detransitioner. She's regretted it. She's, got huge mental health problems and so on. She's just been awarded $2 million for neglect of these medical practitioners.
Wow.
So that's a good outcome.
Where was that?
Where in America.
Okay. So this is where things are going.
Yeah. Well, it's one swallow doesn't make a summer, but
sure.
It's going to make people run scared.
But this
Yeah.
this is part of the side effects that we're paying for, because that $2 million is going to come out of my pocket and your pocket.
Yeah, well, that's true, but it should be a cautionary tale to these practitioners
Exactly.
building their practice around this
Yes.
trans industry.
Pockets, correct.
Yeah.
But even before that happened, one of the biggest insurers of medical practitioners in Australia, called the Medical Defence Australia, MDA, they issued a directive to all doctors practicing gender medicine that they would not cover the doctor's liability if their patients subsequently sued them down the track for not obtaining informed consent or being too precipitous in telling the child that this is the right way to go. So there's a tiny little box of caution there. And the third thing that's happened very recently in the last week or so is that the American Society of Plastic Surgeons have issued a new guide to plastic surgeons that they should cease genital surgeries on young people under the age of 19. So that has really set the cat among the pigeons. It's actually a sane document. It's a responsible document. They've taken forever to do it, and they've mutilated tens of thousands of young people before they've reached this startling conclusion that we should not, remove body parts from healthy children and adolescents, but at least they've got to that point. And so there are these chinks, occurring in the trans activist fortress. But even on the other side, even as these things are happening, they're shoring up their position and getting $10 million from the Australian government. The Americans has said no to gender affirming care. There is no such thing as transgender.
Yeah.
And yet there are hundreds of lawsuits going on in America at the moment to try and reverse the executive order and all of the subsequent orders that have come from that.
Yeah.
And parents are changing states and all this kind of thing to get their child this much needed surgery.
That's another thing. You can't take your kid out of the state of Victoria or New South Wales if they're transitioning. Just so you know, it's like, I'll just get out of the state. You actually can't in this country. They'll send the police after you, the federal police.
Well, it's also if you're doing the other thing, which is doing it behind closed doors, taking your kid to the priest or to see, to seek another opinion or whatsoever, you are breaking the law basically. So you are risking, the consequences.
Yeah.
You can't just do it behind closed. They'll never find out. Well,
Yeah.
they do find out, and you get caught trying to get your kid to go to, another doctor or a priest or what you were talking about before.
Yeah.
You basically getting a ticket.
And Rami, you and I, we're from the western suburbs.
Yep.
So we engage with a lot of obviously Middle Eastern Christians that are very firm about their beliefs on faith and transitioning and gays and all of that. These were some of the highest no voting places during the LGBT same-sex marriage vote in 2017. And a lot of the Muslim communities as well, same thing. Yep. Same thing, same values. They don't like this stuff. And in some of the schools, this is a powder keg. There are some trans kids starting to come through, and all the Muslim girls, they're not allowed to take their hijab off and adjust it in the bathrooms because a trans boy might come in, that's transitioned to be a girl, might come into the bathroom. So there's these crazy stories for years now I've been hearing. All the girls, these Muslim girls, they're forced to go and use the nurse's bathroom because the trans boy. So you've got these massive lines outside. So this is a powder keg waiting to happen, and the government is just sitting by and doing nothing. And very clearly, this is something that needs to be addressed. And so, no, look, this is a hot topic. This is something we're worried about, and I'm very worried about it. I really am. And the idea that any parent would have their kid taken off them would incense them, and with anger.
What would you say to a kid if your kid came up to you and wanted to have this conversation? many people wouldn't know what to do. Well, what
Yeah.
would you do? How
Yeah.
would you talk to them?
Yeah.
Parents feel incredibly disempowered, and so do we. I mean, we're trying to be the voice in the wilderness saying, can we please revisit this? Can we think about it in a sane and logical way? And they just shut us down and also threaten. Like the Australian, the ACT, Human Rights Commission, alleges that I have been practicing conversion therapy and engaging in vilification. They have not produced one shred of evidence that that is the case,
Yeah.
but they're quite happy to charge me with this.
Yes.
And then there's this wall of silence while I'm trying to wait and hear, the outcome. Now, in a court of law, at least you've got the opportunity. Sorry.
That's all right.
Oh.
Water will help.
So, in a court of law, there's more transparency, there's discovery. You have to hand over all the documents. Each side hands over all the documents they have.
Yeah.
With the human rights commissions and with the professional bodies, it's much more secretive. They only tell you what they want you to know, not what is fair and just for you to mount a proper defence of yourself.
Yeah.
And they make these outrageous claims and outrageous decisions based on no evidence. And they have just been going around the country destroying people's lives because they're saying, can we please put a break on the gender transitioning of children?
Yeah.
That's all they're saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what that answers another point in what you asked earlier. Like this is part of the reason maybe why a lot of professionals
don't speak up.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is cowardice. I mean, to an extent. I mean, the idea that a lot of this is permeating out of the universities, and some of them may not get tenure or may lose tenure, or I mean, there's the fear of that, and then there's the practices. They come after you. We've seen how they've gone after Barbara O'Neill for other medical things.
Yep,
but
that's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, we've had Dr. Barbara O'Neill on here before, but even other people that comes on as well, and it's just ridiculous when I see these things happening.
Speaking of Barbara O'Neill, is there like a relation? Sorry to cut you off, Joel. Is there a relation between gut health and mental health when it comes to, child development?
There's a whole kind of emerging discipline called psychoneuroendocrinology, which tries to put all of those disciplines together.
Wow.
And there have been a lot of papers recently talking about, gut and mind being very closely related. But that's probably a bit tangential to our topic. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that we've copped our own lawsuit in the past. I was sued by a member of Parliament who I was criticising. I was saying that they were pushing ideologies that were grooming children to basically become more gay and whatever. What I said was factually correct. It was factually correct. Pushing these LGBT ideologies. And my lawyers told me, you would win in court, but that would cost you $500,000 to defend yourself.
Yes.
If you win, you get $250,000 back. If you win, so you're still $250,000 down. If you lose, that $500,000's gone. You have to pay them $500,000 as well on top of that. That's not a win. So obviously we settled, and that's not the first time I've had to settle out of court before. But this is, I know they're militant. I know they're insane about this stuff.
Yes.
And so no, I look at this. I look at this stuff and I understand why parents are homeschooling now, because if you never put your kid in but they're starting to really come down on homeschooling as well. They really want to start even getting into that. They're never happy. They'll never just leave you alone. They want your kids.
Look,
it's ridiculous.
We really should learn from their propaganda machine. It is brilliant. They have insinuated themselves insidiously into every fabric of life, and we've been asleep at the wheel. How did this happen?
Yeah.
Why has it happened? What's the point of it? And as you say, it keeps coming back. Who's benefiting? But there are a lot of sociologists out there who are saying that one of the things, and I don't know, but one of the reasons is that they want to break down all sexual barriers, and they're wanting to encourage man-child sex and make that legitimate.
Right. Yeah. The minor attracted person.
Yes, the minor attracted.
Yes. You mean a pedophile that we should hang publicly? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. But you know what? I like that they're coming out and starting to be public about that, because then you sort of can identify, the fact that that's where this is going. Because we've thought it for a while, but it's becoming more overt. Correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like.
Yeah. I haven't kind of engaged with those kinds of arguments because I'm absolutely swamped with engaging with the treatment. I'm actually focused very much on supporting families and young people to exit the maze. That's where I'm coming from. But also, in order to do that, I have to be a legitimate academic and researcher.
Yep.
And that's why I've written the book, to say to people, here are the arguments. You make up your own mind, but here are the arguments as to why transgender ideology and transgender medicine is nothing more than a scandal and a scam. And please, everybody, think about it for a minute.
We came across this poster the other day and posted on our Turning Point page. It says this is basically backing pedophiles. It says pedophiles are people too because love is love. Can you just bring that up, Rami? So
sorry.
it says pedophiles are people too because love is love, and it's got a man with a child and
you know what it is,
LGBT flag.
You know what it is. It's what's a woman today, and tomorrow it's going to be what's a child.
Yeah, love is love, mate. Love is love. And if you don't like that, then you're being homophobic. It's like, or pedophobic. It's like, what? We just lost the thread. Ever since I left school, I've been trying to find the adults in society. I'm still looking. It feels that way because in government, they tended to take care of these things. Professionals in medicine were professionals in medicine.
I know.
But it just seems to be like we've lost the plot completely.
Well, look, I've tried to get the message across to central people in government. And I've got colleagues in government who've set me up, with meetings for me to explain in the simplest possible terms why they should not be supporting transgender medicine.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to some children's commissioners and one of them said to me, I started to launch into, why, it's not right. And she stopped me and she said, just before you keep going, could you please explain to me the difference between sex and gender? This is a children's commissioner with an office draped in the rainbow flag.
Oh my.
And all these, slogans about we love transgender children. She did not understand the first thing about transgender ideology.
That's insane. And she's the biggest proponent of it.
And she's a children's commissioner.
Yeah.
Just very recently, Anna Cody, who is the sex discrimination commissioner, was attending a parliamentary committee to answer questions, and Lisa Chandler was asking the question. She's a senator from Tasmania, and she said, how would you define a woman?
Yep.
Anna Cody freezes for a moment, and then she says, I am not able to answer that question because I'm not a biologist.
Yep.
But she's the sex discrimination commissioner, and she doesn't even know what her job is because she doesn't know what a woman is.
When I hear that, I say I should stop paying my taxes because I'm not an accountant or something. Like seriously, I don't know. How much income do you make? I don't know. I'm not an accountant.
Exactly.
It is. But what do we pay? How much is she earning? 400,000.
Oh, must be. And you know what she said? I'm not quoting exactly because I don't remember the exact quote, but she said when Lisa Chandler further questioned her, she said, I think we're using different language to communicate and therefore we're not communicating.
These are our best and brightest in Canberra. This is why they earn the big bucks, Rami, 500 grand, a year.
See, this is the moral narcissism.
Yeah.
And also the abdication of their moral code, of their integrity.
Yeah.
I mean, she was prepared to make herself look like a complete fool, which I believe her to be now, rather than saying, I don't know why I'm adhering to this ideology because it's so wrong and it's doing so much harm to women and children.
And there's no courage. There's no courage to even. There's no sense of their own. What they stand for, and there's no courage, even if they knew what they believed.
If you take the camera and go to Western Sydney, you'll be able to ask anybody you see in the street, "What's a woman?" and they'll know. Perhaps
they'll look at you like you're an idiot.
Yeah,
that's
well, that's
because isn't it obvious?
Well, don't you think any of these people that answers that question correctly is more suitable to be in the position of that lady that couldn't define what a woman is?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What was the commissioner's role again? Exactly.
Well, to protect the rights of women and children and to safeguard them.
So of all the people to go to with these issues, she's the one, and she couldn't tell you what gender.
Yes, that's right.
She asked you what gender is.
Yes. Oh, do you mean the commissioner?
Sorry,
the sex discrimination?
The sex discrimination, yeah.
Yeah, no, her role is to make sure that women are treated equally to men and that, the rights are there, the legislation's there. And now, she's overseeing a situation in which we have men in women's prisons.
Yes.
And there are repeated stories of sexual assault by trans females against women in women's prisons.
Yes. Yes.
And there are numerous stories about trans women in female sport where the trans female has seriously injured a female sports person.
Yes.
So we're not doing very well.
You can't be a feminist and a trans rights activist.
You can't.
And that's what I say to a lot of these do-gooders out there. I say, I'm a bigger feminist than you. I don't want women to be raped. I don't want them to be beaten up in sports. I want them to be able to defend themselves and their kids. I'm a proponent. I think they should be able to arm themselves with a gun, for example, in home invasion examples and whatever, so they can protect their kids. I'm a bigger feminist than these people. But also, I'm a more sympathetic trans activists because I actually believe that if you look at the data, which you showed me over 30 years, this is not the best thing for them to be doing. This is suicide. And the idea, this is literally suicide. In 30 years, you will check in on 100 people that have had a trans surgery and 25 out of the 100 will be dead. 25 souls. And
just from suicide.
Just from suicide.
That's not from other causes of death.
That's right, yes. Yeah. And so like, there reaches a point where these do-gooders are full of crap. They've got to be called out, and you need to demonstrate that you care about these people more than they do, and you can't just cede the ground. You need to have a policy. You need to have a policy. You can't just leave it Liberal Party. You actually have to have a policy on these issues.
That's right.
So, yeah.
You know what I'm afraid of is this kind of thing. A subject like suicide becomes normalized because I've been to Thailand many times. And, you make a lot of friends when you go there, especially in a tourism area. You see a lot of transgender people identify as ladyboys. Now, I've met a lot of, these transgender people, and I've made friends with, and just like the graph show, they hit midlife crisis. They realize, there's no way of return, and they commit suicide. So every trip I go to Thailand and I ask about somebody who's missing, have you seen this person or have you seen that person? They jumped out of a balcony, and
terrible.
It's so normalized. It's so normalized there now.
I'd love to see some stats on Thailand. I'd love to see a report on Thailand.
Well, the government doesn't let you go anywhere near that, even interview them or anything of that sort.
Right.
So that's the thing. It becomes so normalized that every visit, I've lost 4 to 6 friends, basically.
That's insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Can you put up another graph?
Of course I can.
Um,
Yeah. You describe it to me. I've got the folder right
Okay,
here.
just
Sure.
just go through.
But these are the
Okay, that one.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here?
What you're looking at there is the
Just keep it up, Rami.
there are now 7 gender clinics
Yeah.
in Australia. Well, there's more than 7, but there were 7 that I could get data from 2014 to 2024, and going right back to the first question about what's happened over this time period.
Yes.
You can see, in the 2014, there were just a handful of young people attending gender clinics. And if we go, to the other end at 2024, you can see, the increases are enormous, and they can't be explained by, the more sympathetic social environment.
Greater access.
And greater access and all of that. It can't be explained by that.
Yeah, it's tenfold for this blue clinic in Victoria.
Yes.
And you've done different states as well.
I have. I've done different states.
Which is great.
Yes.
And it's funny because Victoria is undeniably the most woke state. I mean, the idea that it's numerically higher, it's the second most populous state.
Yes.
But it's also, I might be wrong in terms of proportion. I mean, maybe in Canberra, which I don't think you have, maybe in Canberra they've got a big uptake.
Well, we can't get data from there.
Can't get data from.
No.
They're so woke you can't get data. So that should tell you what you need to know. Yeah.
Well, the other thing I was gonna say is, in regards to Mardi Gras, and it's Pride Month, we're celebrating and all that sort of stuff. The one thing I noticed when I've been to a Pride Month in Thailand is that, it's a festival, it's cool, and they send their children there, and once you interact with people, talk to people, and you go through it, it's the endocrine it becomes normalized for children to see things, by the way, that that are horrible, like people are nude, people are doing acts in front of you in public, so it's embedded in the child's head, of course, and which is not right. But they also they get points. The schools that send these children to these festivals get points.
Yeah.
Which is something I said maybe 3 years ago will come to Australia, and I wasn't wrong. Now you get tokens.
You get the day off school for a time attending the Extinction Day protest, the climate change day process. But similar things, the LGBT stuff as well.
Well, this is the brilliance of the gender activism that's going on. It's like the Consumer Affairs will give products stars for being compliant with safety and longevity and things like that. They have taken every single successful advertising campaign that ever existed and collated it all into the gender ideology, publicity propaganda campaign, and they've done brilliantly.
Yeah.
This is the terrible bitter pill that people like us are having to sit and watch.
Yes.
The only thing they're good at is propaganda. They're hopeless at science. They're hopeless at ethics. They're hopeless at morality. They're hopeless at outcomes.
Yes.
They just need to get the children through the door. They do not care what happens to them afterwards.
Yes.
And if you speak to a range of detransitioners, they will say they might go back to the same clinic and say they've changed their mind and they want reversals of, procedures. And they said they are treated with utter contempt and disrespect.
Of course.
And told that they weren't trans in the first place. And they're just sent away.
Wow.
And then the clinics have the unmitigated gall to say our detransition rates are 0. Why? Because detransitioners do not go back to the same clinic.
They really are bastards, aren't they?
Because of
Right.
the maltreatment that they receive, the mistreatment.
Yeah, they really are bastards. I mean, it reminds me of how you can't people that, what's the word, Rami? Where someone says, oh yeah, just keep the mic nice and close. What's the word where someone leaves Islam and then they
revert.
Apostate.
Apostate.
So it's with cultural Marxism, it's the apostates are just despised.
Yes,
and
yes.
dead to them,
Yes,
basically.
yes.
And it's like it makes a lot of sense because in some more radical forms of Islam they kill apostates.
Yes, yes.
They're frowned upon the family and honor killings.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's horrific. That's absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
You've shocked me today. And yeah, I mean, was there anything you felt that we should cover that we haven't covered? Because there's a lot there, and I know we're going to get a lot of questions from people, and we might have to do a follow up.
Yes, yes.
There's a lot of people out there that might have stories of their own.
Look, I'll just say one more thing about the dishonesty of this movement. They have appropriated two groups. One are the gay groups, and the second are the intersex groups.
Mm.
Now, intersex is a disorder of sexual development. It is a medical problem. It is identifiable. And there are 40 different types of disorders of sexual development.
Yeah.
And it's very rare. It only occurs in 0.02% of the population. But it's so well studied that they've identified these 40 different disorders, how it came about. And the trans lobby has appropriated that information to say that sex is on a spectrum. Because the disorders of sexual development can sometimes mean that a baby is born with both sets of organs, some female, some male, and so on. And so they're determined to destroy the scientific fact that sex is binary by using these disorders of sexual development.
These extreme point
Yes,
0.001
exactly.
of the population.
Exactly.
No, it's 0.02.
That's right.
Is it 0.02?
That's right.
And if I'm correct, that's not all extreme, right? So with the 0.02, that group of people, not all of their cases is very extreme, correct?
What do you mean by extreme?
Could some of it be maybe, apologize for the language, maybe just a micro penis or, stuff that are like not very...
Where it requires a transition?
Yep.
Sure.
Not all of them require a transition.
Yeah, no. They're not using it for that. They're using it to say that sex is on a spectrum, that some people are half male, half female kind of thing. And you can move along that spectrum depending on how you feel on any given day. Okay. That's what they're using it for. But here's the irony. In about 2012, prior to that, children who were born with disorders of sexual development, the parents were told at birth, and in consultation with, the specialists, they would decide what the child would be. So if they had two lots of organs, they would remove one set of organs and the child would be brought up in the sex of the remaining organs.
What about missing organs? Like, is missing testicles also counts as an intersex?
Yeah, it does. That's a different story, and I'll come back to it. But with those children who were born with both sets of organs, the policy is now that the child must be allowed to grow up and make that decision for themselves. So they've stopped these early surgeries because the child is not involved in the decision-making, and yet it's the child's body. So they say the child grows up, and at an appropriate age when they're ready, or if they can choose not to do anything, but if they're ready, they can then, go one way or the other. Whereas the trans lobby is saying the opposite. We have to transition these children early so that they will pass as the opposite sex. But the children don't know where they're headed, really, because they're still very young and developmentally immature. And they're not given the same time to breathe, time to decide, time to mature.
Right.
And grow up.
Yes.
So there is so much hypocrisy and inconsistency in the trans activist playbook that nobody is talking about. I've written a whole chapter in my book on why the transgender ideology is a foundation for nothing.
Yeah.
It's a house built on sand. And if people just pause for a moment and think about all of those issues that are so illogical, so inconsistent, so mutually contradictory, they would say, oh, how could I ever believe that in the first place?
Yes. Well, you've blown my mind, and we've almost reached the 2-hour mark, which means it's a good discussion, but I know we're going to get a lot of questions from parents about the dangers of school and maybe people that are already in these situations. And so if you're happy, I'll link your book in the description.
Right. That'd be
and I'm going to make sure that I also give people a means to reach out to you in a way that you won't get flooded, but you can manage it so you can keep your privacy. But again, guys, this is a really thoroughly good conversation I've enjoyed. That's why I always keep these books next to me ready to go, because it comes up that often,
right.
these issues. And the audience is very much geared that way, with 66% of the audience being mothers or grandmothers or people with kids in the family. But Intransigence is the book, guys, and I'm looking forward to meandering through the book myself and getting through and getting some stats, which I have no doubt, Dianna, you've done a great job in getting through this. Gender ideology, social contagion, and the scandal of youth gender medicine. I want to thank you so much for coming in. God bless you. God bless your work. If you ever have any problems because of this interview or because of your work, please reach out to us. We want to support you. My audience respect a lot of people in their professions and how militant this particular crowd can be. And so I really just want to bless you and more power to your right arm with regards to this stuff. So I can't say it more often, but I truly respect what you're doing in protecting the children. I think it's so essential. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless you. Guys, if you've enjoyed this discussion, please give it a share. Please give it a like. Consider clicking the links in the description to find Dianna's work. But also, if you want to support the show, feel free to donate. Head to our website, tpaust.com.au, and you can support the show financially or actually buy some merchandise, which we have. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much. Ciao.